Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I was kneeling on the soft carpet, bending over to pick up the laundry that had spilled from the basket, when I felt the subtle creak of the hardwood floor behind me. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't need to look up to know he was there. I could feel it, his presence, heavy in the room, like a sudden warmth that prickled the back of my neck. A strand of my hair fell into my face, and as I brushed it away, I sensed him stepping closer. The air between us thickened, charged with a silent electricity that made my pulse race faster than usual. I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the mirror across the hallway, and our eyes met for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. His gaze lingered, curious, a little too intense, like he was studying me in a way that made me suddenly aware of every curve, every movement. I tried to focus on the pile of laundry in front of me, but my fingers trembled slightly. There was a subtle shift. He leaned forward just enough that our shoulders brushed. A small shiver ran up my spine. "Oh," I whispered, more to myself than to him, and I could tell he felt it too, the way he moved slightly back, almost teasing, as if he knew the effect he had on me. A playful tension hung in the air. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of things unspoken, things that made the room feel smaller, closer. I could hear the soft rustle of his shirt as he adjusted, the faint catch in his breath. My own breath hitched. Was it nervousness? Excitement? Or something else, something heavier and more daring that neither of us wanted to admit yet? Then, just as quickly, he froze. He didn't say a word. He didn't move. And I, heart hammering, couldn't stop the tiny, involuntary smile tugging at my lips. Something had shifted, something unspoken but undeniable. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat, swallowed by the weight of that silent, magnetic stare. Before I could gather myself, the sound of a phone buzzing from the other room jolted us both, breaking the moment, leaving a tension that lingered like smoke. And in that heartbeat, I realized, I had no idea what he was going to do next. I could feel the warmth of the room pressing in around us, yet there was something heavier than just heat, a weight of unspoken history. My eyes flitted to him again, the young man who had always been my stepson but who, somehow, had become something more complicated in my mind. Life hadn't made it easy for us. His mother had passed years ago, and I had stepped into a house full of expectations I hadn't fully understood. And somewhere along the way, the boundaries I swore I'd never cross had started to blur, silently, in moments like these. I remembered the first time I noticed him differently. It had been a rainy evening. He was laughing at some silly joke I didn't fully understand. His hair was damp from the rain, clinging to his forehead, and I had felt an unexpected rush in my chest, a mixture of admiration, concern, and something undeniably more. I had quickly scolded myself for thinking it, but the memory lingered, a small, mischievous ember. Now, standing so close, the air between us charged, I realized those small, stolen moments of attention had built into something tangible, something impossible to ignore. He didn't just look at me, he studied me, as if trying to read my thoughts in the slightest twitch of my lips or the flicker in my eyes. And I, despite every rational boundary I tried to maintain, was drawn to it. Drawn to him. Yet there was fear behind it too. I could feel my heart thudding against my ribs, a nervous rhythm that mirrored the unspoken tension. What if someone walked in? What if I misread his intentions? The rational part of me told me to step back, to regain composure, but the other part, the part that had been quietly longing for a connection, for attention, for someone who saw me as more than just a caretaker or a stepmother, stayed rooted in that spot, heart fluttering, aware of every movement he made. He shifted slightly, and our hands brushed accidentally as he picked up a stray piece of paper I hadn't noticed. The contact was brief, almost dismissive, but it set off a chain reaction of awareness I couldn't ignore. His eyes met mine, lingering, hesitant but daring. It was a small, silent invitation, one I wasn't sure I was ready to answer, yet I couldn't look away. We stayed like that, inches apart but worlds apart, caught between desire and restraint, between the past we shared and the possibilities we had yet to explore. Every second stretched, heavy with tension, with anticipation, with that dangerous thrill of the unspoken. And then the front door clicked. Someone was home. We froze. The moment hung, delicate and fragile, and I realized with a sudden, sharp pang, I had no idea how long I could keep pretending nothing was stirring between us. The room felt smaller now, every movement amplified by the closeness. He lingered by the laundry basket, his eyes scanning the scattered clothes, but I could feel them on me, not the fabric. I caught a flash of something in his gaze, curiosity, yes, but something else too. A hint of something like jealousy, or maybe longing. My pulse spiked, betraying me in a way my calm exterior tried desperately to hide. Earlier, I'd noticed how he watched me from across the kitchen when I was fixing dinner, a small crease of tension in his brow whenever I laughed at someone else's joke. I hadn't allowed myself to think about it then, chalked it up to ordinary attention, but now the reality pressed in. There was a pull between us, subtle but undeniable, threading every glance, every accidental brush of our hands. He bent slightly to pick up a sock I had missed. Our fingers brushed again, light, almost dismissive, but I could feel the charge radiating from it. My stomach fluttered, a mixture of anticipation and guilt, and I had to remind myself to breathe. His eyes flicked up to mine, and I saw it clearly. He was daring me, silently teasing, testing boundaries I had convinced myself were solid. The tension built as the air between us thickened. I wanted to step away, to restore some semblance of normalcy, yet a dangerous curiosity rooted me to the spot. My heart raced as I imagined what it would mean to let the feeling linger, to lean into the intensity that had been simmering beneath polite exchanges and casual touches. Every inch we closed, every quiet second stretched, felt like walking a tightrope between desire and restraint. I tried to focus on folding the laundry, but my hands fumbled. I heard him shift closer, his presence unmistakable, a weight that pressed in without words. The room seemed to shrink around us, the outside world fading, leaving only the unspoken question hovering in the air: what would happen if we allowed ourselves to cross the invisible line we'd both been circling for months? Before I could answer, the sound of a distant door creaking made both of us freeze. Eyes locked, breaths caught, a wordless understanding passing between us. This moment was far from over, and neither of us could ignore the pull simmering beneath our careful restraint. The house was quiet, shadows stretching across the walls as the evening sun dipped low. I found myself in the hallway again, laundry basket in hand, when I realized he was behind me, closer than before. Our footsteps echoed softly, a rhythm that felt almost synchronized, though we hadn't spoken a word in minutes. The air between us had become electric, every small movement magnified in intensity. He leaned slightly against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me as I struggled with a stubborn shirt caught in the folds of the basket. I felt a flutter in my chest, not just nervousness, but something deeper, a dangerous excitement I hadn't allowed myself to admit. His eyes followed every movement I made, unblinking, yet soft, almost hesitant. "Need a hand?" he asked, voice casual, but there was a tension underneath it that made me swallow hard. I nodded, and as he stepped closer to help, our shoulders brushed. The contact was fleeting, yet it sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me of everything we'd been dancing around for weeks. As we worked together, folding and organizing, I noticed his hand lingered just a second too long near mine, the brush of fingers subtle but deliberate. My heart hammered, ears ringing with the quiet of the house and the sound of our shared breaths. Every glance, every hesitant touch, was a conversation neither of us dared to speak aloud. A sudden laugh escaped me at something trivial, and he mirrored it, his smile warm, yet charged with something unspoken. I felt myself leaning slightly into him, drawn by proximity, by the thrill of the forbidden. The quiet moments we shared felt impossibly intimate, a world apart from the rest of reality. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, plunging the hallway into a warm, shadowed gloom. He froze, and so did I, our faces inches apart in the dim light. The air between us vibrated with anticipation, the kind that makes every heartbeat thunder. For a fleeting second, the world felt like it had shrunk to just the two of us. And then, a sudden noise, the door creaking, a floorboard groaning, pulled us apart, leaving a charged silence that hung like a promise. I didn't know if we would have a chance to speak, to move closer, or if the tension we'd built would dissipate into nothing. All I knew was that the next moment would change everything. The hallway seemed to shrink around us, shadows from the flickering light stretching across the walls like silent witnesses. I could feel my pulse thundering in my ears, my hands trembling slightly as I clutched the laundry basket. He was closer than ever, his presence pressing into me in a way that made the air thick and almost tangible. Every instinct screamed caution, yet a magnetic pull rooted me to the spot. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low but steady, breaking the silence that had been stretching taut between us for minutes. My stomach twisted in anticipation, nerves and curiosity colliding in a sharp, electric rush. I looked up, and our eyes met. The intensity in his gaze was impossible to ignore, equal parts honesty, longing, and fear. "What is it?" I asked softly, my voice barely above a whisper. He swallowed, glancing away for just a moment before locking eyes with me again. "I didn't just notice you," he admitted. I've been feeling something for a while now, and I can't pretend it's normal anymore. I shouldn't, but I can't stop thinking about you." My chest tightened. The words hung in the air, both a revelation and a shock. I had imagined this moment, feared it, and even hoped for it in quiet, stolen thoughts, but hearing it aloud made the tension almost unbearable. The emotional wall we'd both been maintaining cracked in an instant, leaving raw vulnerability in its place. I wanted to respond, to reassure him, to pull back, to lean closer, all at once. My own emotions were tangled, fear, desire, guilt, and a strange, undeniable exhilaration. It was a dangerous admission, one that should have sent us both running, yet instead, it drew us closer in the charged silence. Suddenly, a sound from the living room, a door opening, pulled us sharply back to reality. My heart skipped, and he flinched slightly. Someone could walk in at any moment, and everything would be exposed. Yet, in that instant, the unspoken connection between us crystallized. We knew the boundaries, but the attraction, the forbidden tension, and the longing were impossible to ignore. We stood frozen, inches apart, breaths shallow and synchronized. The hallway felt both too small and infinite, a space where anything could happen, yet we were bound by the weight of our own restraint. I don't know what we're going to do, I admitted, voice trembling slightly, but I know one thing, I can't ignore this either. His eyes softened, a mixture of relief and anticipation flickering across his face. And just as the silence wrapped us like a fragile cocoon, the faint click of footsteps from upstairs reminded us both, the next choice, the next move, would change everything. The tension that had been simmering for weeks finally erupted. We stood in the hallway, the warm light casting long shadows, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The words he had confessed earlier hung between us, heavy and unshakable, pressing against the fragile boundaries we had maintained. "I can't pretend anymore," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "We've danced around this for too long, and it's only getting harder." His eyes widened slightly, but there was a glint of relief beneath the uncertainty. "I know," he whispered. "I've been scared, afraid of what it means. But I can't ignore it either." We both paused, breaths shallow, hearts racing. The air felt electric, charged with everything we hadn't allowed ourselves to say. There was no room for misinterpretation anymore, our emotions were raw, open, and vulnerable. I don't know what's going to happen next, I admitted, the words heavy with truth, but I do know that running away won't fix anything. Not for either of us. He nodded slowly, his hand brushing past mine in a fleeting, accidental touch that made me shiver. Then we face it, he said quietly, together. Whatever comes, we face it together. The room felt suddenly smaller, and yet somehow infinite, as though the walls had contracted to focus on us alone. Every glance, every subtle movement, carried weight. We were no longer tiptoeing around our feelings or the impossible tension that had grown between us. We were confronting it head-on, acknowledging it in full, without fear. I could feel the layers of guilt, hesitation, and longing peel away in that moment, replaced by clarity. This was about more than attraction. It was about honesty, courage, and the choice to stop denying the connection that had been quietly shaping us. A quiet laugh escaped me, nervous but genuine. You really do make everything feel more intense, I said, shaking my head slightly. He smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and something tender I couldn't quite name. And you make me realize I don't have to hide how I feel anymore, he said, voice low but steady. The quiet in the hallway was almost comforting now, filled with the knowledge that we had faced the impossible tension and come out on the other side, together, yet still uncertain of what the future would hold. And as we stood there, inches apart, the unspoken promise lingered: we would navigate the consequences, embrace the risk, and, perhaps, allow the connection we had denied ourselves for so long to blossom into something real. The house was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the evening light filtering through the windows. The tension that had clung to every corner seemed to dissolve, leaving behind a fragile calm, a space where honesty and warmth could finally breathe. We stood together in the hallway, a few feet apart, both of us still catching our breath from the whirlwind of emotions that had passed between us. I never wanted things to be so complicated, I admitted, voice gentle, almost vulnerable. But I also never wanted to ignore what we feel. Not anymore. He smiled softly, eyes glimmering with a mixture of relief and tenderness. Neither did I, he said. I didn't know how to tell you without crossing a line. I stepped closer, drawn by the sincerity in his gaze, the honesty that had replaced months of unspoken longing. There was no rush, no expectation, just a quiet recognition of the connection that had been growing between us. Every heartbeat felt synchronized, every breath shared, every glance charged with affection and understanding. Whatever happens next, I whispered, we'll face it together. No more hiding. He nodded, a small, almost shy smile tugging at his lips. Together, he echoed. In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. The small, everyday details, the laundry, the fading light, the quiet creak of the floor, became part of the intimacy of the scene. Our hands hovered near each other, hesitant, then finally brushed in a tender, deliberate touch. The contact was light, safe, and yet it carried the weight of everything we had felt, the unspoken promises, the mutual understanding, and the relief of shared truth. We laughed softly at the nervous tension that had built up over weeks, a laugh that was light, freeing, and genuine. The earlier uncertainty seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of closeness that neither of us had dared hope for before. It was a beginning, a quiet, tender moment that hinted at a deeper bond growing stronger with every passing second. And as we stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, I realized that this shared smile, this gentle touch, this acknowledgement of each other, was the culmination of every secret glance, every stolen heartbeat, and every subtle tension. It was the promise of something lasting, real, and entirely ours.